righty.
Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to introduce to you Tandrea Elmore of New Vision Counseling Center. She's going to be with us this morning speaking about life during, before, and after the pandemic. Tandrea, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be here with you all this morning virtually, but nonetheless, it is definitely an honor and a pleasure. And so I'll just jump right in and talk about life before, during, and after the pandemic. And I'm sure that we all can't wait for the after the pandemic part.
We are excited.
Okay. All right, so briefly, we're just going to talk about overall what mental and emotional health looks like. Also recognizing the type of adjustments that we have had to make over the last 2 to 3 years, as well as how do we adjust to those changes in order to maintain our mental and emotional health. And then also being able to recognize our true thoughts, feelings, and emotions during this time. Okay, so I will start with a short video. Quite so often we are very conscious of our physical fitness. You know, we go to the gym, we do yoga, we walk in the park so that we can keep our physical being together healthy, and we like to look nice in our business suits and our cute jeans or our workout pants. But sometimes we don't put as much emphasis on our inner fitness, which is our mental and our emotional health. I know that a lot of us wear our superwoman cape from day to day, and you know, we forget to take it off. We're wearing it all the time. And so today we're just going to talk a little bit about what that inner fitness looks like.
We've always thought of great athletes as the strongest, the fittest, chiseled to perfection. But what's a strong body without a sound mind? We're so focused on strength that we forget to strengthen our focus. The mind is like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. And while the greats mastered the body, the greatest mastered the mind.
Right. And so the Calm app, if you do not have that downloaded on your phone, that would be a great tool to take with you so that you can use it whether you are at home, in your office, or just in transition, which I know we're all kind of probably accustomed to doing things on the go. Okay, so what is mental and emotional health? Mental health is a part of mental health, is how well your mind processes and understands the information that we experience. So sometimes it's not the experiences that we encounter from day to day, but it's how our mind receives and perceives those things that determines our mental and emotional health. And how you feel can definitely affect your ability to carry out your everyday activities, your relationships, and your overall mental health. So what is emotional wellness? Emotional wellness is the ability to successfully handle life stresses and adapt to change in difficult times. And I'm sure that if we were to write down a list of our stresses and difficult times, we would probably be here all day. And so the emotional health involves your ability to manage and express the emotions that arise from what you have learned and what you have experienced. So hopefully today I will be able to provide you with some coping skills and interventions to help you to be able to cope with the various things that we have experienced during the pandemic, but then also after the pandemic, which is a time that we're all kind of looking forward to. So here you will see pictures, a collage of pretty much how things looked before 2018 and before. We were able to have in-person graduations, our Thanksgiving dinners, our Christmas dinners. We were able to have the entire family over and have those in person. We were able to travel and go to the beach. and our children had in-person learning, and I guess I should say uninterrupted in-person learning. And so, as we all know, in March of 2019, that looked very differently for us. And so, for me, I thought that this pandemic was going to last 2 weeks. And here we are 2 to 3 years later, and we are still dealing with the pandemic and the some of the aftermaths that have come along with that. And so quite so often we focus on the physical symptoms that come with the pandemic, you know, the illness and all of that. But the thing that is often neglected is the mental and emotional things that have come with the pandemic. And I think we will see this for many years to come. So unfortunately, we did not have this sign that said that there was a huge change ahead that was in store for all of us. Again, like I said, I expected this to last about 2 weeks. I could not figure out why everyone was going to the store buying milk. I have still not figured that one out, but why everyone was purchasing the deep freezers and all of that, you know, everyone just kind of went into a state of panic, and rightfully so. I, on the other hand, I was like, I don't cook enough to buy a deep freezer, so I'm not doing that. Well, in June, I decided I need a deep freezer, and they were so hard to come by because everyone had purchased and were attempting to purchase. And so I think I was on a waiting list on about 4 stores here in Montgomery. So no one, I think, knew what to expect moving ahead in dealing with this pandemic. And so this is what our life transitioned to. We were able to move from working in the gym to working inside of our homes. You know, we were using social media and other virtual platforms like Zoom to meet with our family members, our co-workers. Many of us were able to work remotely from home, and some people are continuing to work remotely from home. We had to cancel trips. I was going to go on my first cruise in 2019, and I was devastated because we had to cancel that. We also, I'm sorry, I moved ahead of myself. We also, for those single ladies and gentlemen, had to move to a world of virtual dating. And I think that's something that people did not think about. You know, the world shut down for a little while. And so if you were a person who was accustomed to, you know, going out to your local restaurant or bar or whatever social event in order to meet people, that changed for a lot of people. And so a lot of people have gravitated to the world of virtual dating. And that's probably another session for another day. Okay, so as I stated before, some of the adjustments that we experienced initially, and some of these things we've relaxed over time because we've learned how to do these things safely. But initially, there was less time with family and friends, working from home, and then there were a lot of people who lost their jobs. The schools closed. Now, to be quite honest, in my daytime, I am a high school teacher. And so when the schools closed for longer than 2 weeks, this is when I knew it was serious. You know, we don't close for much. So that's when I knew that this was something very serious. So learning from home, and this was a huge transition and continues to be a huge transition for many of our children. Parents and grandparents attempting to help students with technology. You know, for some parents, technology is not their strong suit. And so to have to help navigate a new system with your child, you know, I think it gave a new respect for teachers with some of our parents. Some of our physical churches closed. I know that many churches have been using a virtual platform for quite some time, but there's always nice to have an option. And so if some of the churches closed and you did not have that option, that was a transition and a challenge for many people. And as I stated before, our holidays looked differently. The gyms closed. You know, the gym is one of those things that people go to kind of let off steam. I drive by there and I plan to make an appearance, hopefully sometime this week. But it is a great stress reliever. And so when you remove that in the midst of a pandemic, that can definitely cause some mental strain. Football season, you know, that first year, I think I probably had an increase in clients probably because of this. We live in the South. Football is what we do. So to not be able to say War Eagle or Roll Tide during that special time of the month, you know, that affected a lot of people. Work meetings, family reunions, community organization, girls' nights, they were all virtual. Being unable to family and friends, and losing family members at a higher rate. And so that was definitely, I think, probably the most impactful thing that many of us may have experienced during this pandemic. And then being unable to pay respects in the manner that many of us may be accustomed to. So I ask you to take a moment to think about, what are your thoughts and feelings about these adjustments that we just talked about?
Personally, it was hard. We went from, both of our kids were in school. At the time, we had a 9-month-old and a 3.5-year-old who was in K3. And we went from working full-time in an office to both being at home, full-time remote, and having 2 kids. It was tough. And even now, it's this weird world where I don't want to wear a mask, but at the same time, I'm still scared not to. Like, I still feel like I need to have one on because who knows what's going to happen. And I mean, I think that the repercussions of COVID and the pandemic they're going to be lasting for significantly longer than we ever realized.
Absolutely. And I definitely think that there are a lot of people that share your dilemma of, I'm tired of wearing the mask, but I want to protect myself, but also I want to protect my family. And so you're right. You know, it's a difficult place to be in. And so where do we go from here? And no one really knows. A lot of us are ready to move towards some sense of normalcy. And so even that alone creates a sense of stress. And so I tell people all the time, if you were blessed enough not to know what the word stress meant before the pandemic, this was a great test. Okay. So just in case there are some people who still just don't quite know what it means to be stressed, I'll help you. I'll give you the textbook definition. Stress is a physical, mental, or emotional factor that causes bodily or mental tension, and that can be internal or external factors. The inability to cope with a threat, and this can be real or imagined, to one's well-being, which results in a series of responses and adaptations by the mind and the body. And so, you know, I think a lot of times that I actually forget that when we become stressed, that how it does impact our body. You know, we know that sometimes we may feel tired. You know, we may experience some breakouts. You know, increase in our eating habits. You know, all of those type things. And so, a lot of times that can be directly impacted by stress. Stress occurs when the demands faced outweigh one's coping skills. And so, as I mentioned before, you know, we all have our things that we encounter, which are called stressors, which is any event that one experiences or an environmental stimulus that is perceived as a threat or a challenge to an individual that impacts us. And so we know that stress is going to be around for a long time. You know, there's good stress and there's bad stress, but stress is stress nonetheless. But the key factor to that is, how do we deal with and how do we cope with those when we become stressed? Okay, so The one thing that I want you to know, because I know that when we experience these various things, we feel like we are going through this alone. We feel like if someone has experienced this, that no one has experienced it like me. But the more that we talk to people, and I encourage everyone to have a supportive circle outside of your professional supportive circle, the more you talk to people, you will realize that you are not alone. So we've talked about these adjustments that we've had to experience, but how do we adjust to the things that we've had, things that we've had to make adjustments to? So the first thing I would say is to be able to recognize the fear or anxiety that you may be experiencing. You know, a lot of times we like to tell ourselves that it's okay, or it's going to be okay, or we are okay. Because remember, we're always wearing our Superwoman cape, right? But I'm here to tell you that it is okay not to be okay. Okay. And it is also okay for you to hang up your Superwoman cape. Let someone else wear it, and let someone else be your hero or shero. We don't have to be everything to everybody. And I'm going to say that again. We don't have to be everything to everybody, okay? You'll hear me say you can't pour into an empty cup. When you're on an airplane, the stewardess tells you to put on what? Your mask first, and then help the other passengers. But in our everyday life, we quite so often, we give others their mask, and then meanwhile, we're losing our own oxygen. Okay. Plan routines to help you adapt and to manage your anxiety. Work in shorter time frames with clear and frequent breaks. And this is very important if you're still working remotely, but also if you have returned back to the office. Divide your time clearly between personal, social, and professional. And this is called boundaries, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. Engage with your family and family, friends, and loved ones. And so this says in moderation. This was actually done at the very start of the pandemic. I still think that on some levels it's applicable, but in all things, just make sure that you are putting your safety first. Avoid frequent checking of the latest COVID-19 statistics. This contributes to a lot of the anxiety that we experience, because there's so much information that's coming at us, and it changes from day to day. The CDC gives us, guidelines, and one day, and then 5 days later, it may have changed. And then there's also the scientists that have not been to anyone's school and has not done anyone's research, that has all this information about COVID that just is not accurate. So you want to avoid overstimulating yourself with all of this information, both the facts and the fiction. Okay. And so, which leads to my next thing of not believing everything that you read. Do your own research. And understanding that it takes time to adjust. And so one may say, well, hey, we've been in this pandemic for 2 to 3 years. That should be a significant amount of time. Well, says who? We have never experienced anything of this nature in our lifetime. So we can't put a timestamp on, where one should be mentally and emotionally in dealing with this pandemic. Recognizing that there's an importance in setting boundaries, and then, but also setting those boundaries. And so I had a client tell me that, well, you told me to set the boundaries, but you didn't tell me I had to tell people. Well, how do people know that you have boundaries if you don't tell them? That's like playing a game and then changing the rules in the middle of the game and not telling the other players, right? So I throw that in there, recognizing and setting the boundaries, but also communicating those boundaries to others. And then giving yourself grace and giving others grace as well. We expect ourselves and others to be 100% every day. Your 100% may not look the same every day. Today is Wednesday, so your 100% very well may be what you would consider 75 or 80%. So giving yourself some grace and extending it to others as well. Another helpful thing is to journal your thoughts. Quite so often we like to keep things inside because we don't want to seem like a burden to other people. Oh, they have their own stuff going on, so I don't want to pour my problems onto them, or no one's going to understand, or whatever reason we give to the reason why we don't necessarily feel comfortable in sharing with other people. And so journaling your thoughts is a great way of getting those things outside of your head and outside of your heart. A very close friend of mine told me that it is okay to care, but it is not okay to carry. And so I always have to remind myself of that, because there are a lot of things that I'm passionate about. And so it's okay to care, but it's not okay to carry those things with you from day to day. So here we have two pictures. And so I'm going to ask you to look at both of these pictures and start with the one in the upper left corner. And first, identify what this object is.
From what I can see, it's a set of rubber bands in the top left corner.
Yes. And then what do you see in the bottom right corner?
A stick.
Yes. And so if you had to give me a few words to describe the rubber band, what would that be?
The first that comes off is flexible. And I also feel like, this is not really a word, but they can kind of withstand a lot of pressure. So they can be molded, and you can do a lot with them.
Okay. All right. And then what about the stick?
The stick is rigid. It's tough. It's hard. It doesn't give, and it breaks.
I like that. Easily broken. Okay. And that's one of the words that I have written down. So if you had to pick either of these objects based on your description of them, which one would you say that you sounds more like you in your day-to-day interaction?
Probably the stick.
Okay. So that's okay. So you like structure, you like to kind of know what's going to happen next. You're probably a planner.
Yes. Yeah.
Nothing's wrong with
things. All of that.
Nothing's wrong with that. I have a planner, and I have the hard copy for those of you watching. Because a friend of mine says it's 2022, everything is digital. Well, yes, but I still have my hard copy planner. See, yeah, planner club there. Okay, so I want you to know that the biggest thing, not only in this pandemic, but moving forward, is being able to be flexible and adaptable and being able to adjust. I think there was a huge rise in anxiety because, here's this thing that's coming. We don't know what's going on. We don't know how to deal with it. As you said, we went from working in an office to working at home, and some of us have never done that before. So there was a whole lot of unknowns and just kind of figuring things out along the way. And so that's a recipe, for disaster for a person who likes structure and likes to know what's going to happen next. Okay. And so for me personally, I had to learn to be more like the rubber band, because much like yourself, I have times where I can be flexible, but if I'm truly honest, I'm probably more like the stick. I like to know what's going to happen. I like to be in control. And needless to say, my anxiety went through the roof during the pandemic. And so I had to learn to be more like the rubber band, and not even just through the pandemic, but just in life in general. It helps you in the long run. Okay. And so you'll remember that I said that it's important for us to set boundaries. And so in an earlier slide, I mentioned about having your personal time, your social time, and your professional time, and each thing having its space. And so not only in the pandemic, but before, during, and after, it is important to have that work-life balance, okay? And so one would say, well, what does that look like? So I'm going to rely on a few friends to kind of show you how it should look in setting our boundaries. And of course, there's an ad. I thought I took this out.
She's with a new boyfriend. How about you?
Okay, were you all able to see that? Oh, okay, because yeah, I was trying to, it said pause and I'm not really sure why. Let's see, but we will move on. And so what that was a video of, it was a Seinfeld clip. And so there was a gentleman in the clip that was a person that talks in, gets in everyone's personal space. And so there were a few people that just kind of allowed him to do it, even though they felt very uncomfortable. And so if any of you have watched Seinfeld, then you know that Kramer is very animated and theatrical. I think that's kind of putting it lightly. And so Kramer comes in, and this person who is what they call a close talker, he jumps out of the way. He's not having it. And so I like to show that video. I'm trying to get us out here. Okay. I like to show that video because it's a great depiction of how we should be when we are setting our mental and emotional boundaries. I know a lot of times when we hear boundaries, and especially within the pandemic, you know, we heard about, you know, staying 6 feet apart, social distancing, and all of that. But quite so often we forget about setting those mental and emotional boundaries. Understanding that sometimes we just do not have the space to give ourselves mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so much in the same way that we were very cautious and, social distancing physically, we need to do that same thing at times mentally and emotionally, because remember, we can't pour from an empty cup. Okay. And so, as I stated before, it's very important that everything has its place. Work has its place, our social life has its place, and our what did I say? Social, professional, and our personal lives having its space as well. Okay, so having set work hours definitely helps with balancing work and life, prioritizing and planning. Now, I know that I just said that, being able to be flexible, but it does help to have somewhat of a schedule. The issue is not, kind of having a come apart when you're not able to follow through with that plan or that schedule exactly. Recognizing that when you need help, that it's okay to ask for help, not trying to take on everything and do everything alone. Communicate your needs, whether that's in your personal life or in your professional life. Always remember to carve out time for yourself. I'm sure many of the people watching here are ones that are always giving themselves to others, and we put ourselves on the back burner. It's important that we carve out time for ourselves every day. That may look different from day to day. One day maybe 15 to 30 minutes. One day, if you're really blessed, maybe an hour. But every day you need to carve out time for yourself. Be sensible regarding the expectations that you set for yourself. Like I stated earlier, some of us feel the need to be 100% every day of the year, and that's just not realistic. So, taking into consideration things that are going on, especially a pandemic. And so your 100% may be 80% normally for you. And so being okay with being that 80% during that time. Not bringing work outside of the designated workspace. Now, I know some of you are probably cringing at that, but that's both whether you are working remotely or if you have returned back to the office. Leaving work at work. And so if you are working remotely, I hope that you have a designated work area that is not your bedroom or not your dinner table. Because what happens is, especially inside of your bedroom, if your bedroom becomes your office space, it now tells your brain this is the place where I should be busy. Now, it's okay to get busy, but it's not okay to be busy doing work in the bedroom. And so what happens is when it is time for you to go to sleep, you can't sleep because your brain has associated your room with your office space, a space of where you're working and being busy. So you want to protect the sanctity of your bedroom of a place of peace and a place of rest. Okay. And then prioritize your physical and your mental health. Hopefully everyone, has their annual physicals and all of that as it relates to our physical health, but also incorporating our mental health. Now, I'm not saying that you only should focus on your mental health once a year. That should be something that you focus on all year. And it may look like that you're talking to a counselor or a therapist frequently, or it means that you just kind of checking in with one as needed. But whatever that looks like for you, just making sure that you are giving your mental and emotional health that attention that it so needs and that you so need and deserve. So how do we avoid the blues during the pandemic? Avoiding total isolation. I know that when the pandemic initially started, everything shut down. We were asked to stay home. But we also need that social interaction. We need to stay connected. And so for some people, like I said, we've kind of returned to some sense of normalcy, but there are others that may be experiencing health conditions or just still may be very afraid. And so are still, staying home as much as possible. And that's okay, but making sure that you stay connected, even though you may be staying home. Avoid taking in too much alcohol. We saw an increase in alcohol sales. Part of that maybe, people had a little more free time, but then there's also a population that this is how they cope. And so I can remember seeing posts on social media when a lot of the businesses closed down and only the essential workers were to continue operating. And so people were trying to figure out, well, when did the alcohol store become a essential worker? Well, depending on who you ask. However, alcoholism is real. And so had those stores closed, we probably would have seen a lot of deaths for a host of reasons. And so unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm not really sure, but that is why the alcohol stores remained open. It's very important for us to be aware of our triggers, because how can we know how to manage them if we don't know what our triggers are? And then we don't wait and have a fire drill in the middle of a fire, do we? We have a fire drill so that we know what the plan is. And so that's kind of how this works. We need to become aware of our triggers so that once we are triggered, we already know how to manage and navigate through those emotions that we may be experiencing. And so the next one says, be aware of your emotions, thoughts, and feelings. Amazon sales, I feel like I know I did my part in keeping them in business. We're on the computer more, we're at home, we're multitasking, we're doing our work, but we're also putting those things in our Amazon cart or, Belks or whoever. And so those internet sales increased. And so the thing that we don't want to do in a time where we are experiencing anxiety and some depression is to create some financial strain. And so then it's giving you that immediate gratification of, hey, I've got something new. But then when you get the bill or you look at your bank account and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have any money. So avoid overspending. Do something for someone else. Now, I know I don't have to kind of persuade anybody that's watching on this one, but doing something for someone else can also be gratifying for us as well. Maintain healthy habits. And again, allowing time for yourself. And if you need support, not being afraid to reach out. Now, how do I know if I am just mentally exhausted? If you're having to ask the question, you're probably mentally exhausted. But here are a few signs. You are easily irritated. You feel completely unmotivated, even to do the things that you normally enjoy doing. You're experiencing anxiety or panic attacks. And a lot of people think that panic attacks are, you're having to blow into a paper bag, or, your heart rate or your breathing has accelerated. And all of those things are true, but panic attacks look different in different people. You take hours to fall asleep, or your sleep is broken all throughout the night. You have short patience, or you're short-tempered with family members or colleagues. You're experiencing indigestion, and that's probably one that we don't necessarily associate with our mental and emotional health. We think about, hey, what did I eat to kind of cause this, right? You start crying unexpectedly. I've heard a lot of people say that I've been having crying spells and I don't know why I'm crying, okay? And you feel detached from reality. You're not really emotionally connected to anything, and this is for days, okay? So how do we try to reduce all of these things? How do we try to combat being mentally and emotionally exhausted? We relax. And for some, that's harder than others because our minds are constantly running. We're, even in meditation, we're doing our grocery list. We're trying to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to do after I meditate? And so remember that rubber band, we have to be flexible and adjustable. So daily motivation, meditation, but truly meditating, not being preoccupied, your thoughts being preoccupied, or devotional, getting a massage. I have committed to getting at least one once a month. Having a virtual Netflix watch party, singing or dancing like no one is watching. And in this world of social media, hopefully no one is watching if you're not really good at it. Exercising, adult coloring. This was something that I took on. It was one of my purchases from Amazon. I purchased an adult coloring book, and it was so relaxing. I probably had not colored since my time in elementary school, so it took me back to fond memories. I even went as far as posting them on my my refrigerator like my mom used to do. So things that seem so small could have the hugest impact. Reaching out to family and friends, trying new recipes. This is another one that I did, and creating a mood playlist. And so what this is what the type of moods that you typically would encounter, whether that's, happy, sad, needing motivation, or whatever the case may be. Creating a playlist for each of those areas and having them readily accessible on your cell phone, so that when you are experiencing these feelings, and you need a pick me up, or something to kind of to reinforce the happiness that you're experiencing, you don't have to think about, okay, what song do I want to hear, or where do I go? You already have it set for you, and then you can just go right to your playlist. And music is very therapeutic. It works wonders for me. Aromatherapy, having a candle or a diffuser. Now, I must tell you here, if you are feeling anxious and experiencing anxiety here, you want to stay away from fragrances that are stimulating, like your citrus, okay? Because all that's going to do is to continue to stimulate you. So you want to look for things like lavender or eucalyptus, okay? And this one I think is probably most important before the pandemic, but I think the pandemic brought it to full circle for me. But unplugging, and that looks like cell phone, social media, anything that has anything to do with technology. I don't think we realize how much access we give of ourselves to other people through technology. Whether it's scrolling through social media, like I said, your cell phone. There's maybe some of you that are watching that have family members, friends, or colleagues that know that if I call your phone, or if I send you a text, that you're going to respond, or you're going to answer. And for some of us, it may be immediately. And so then we teach people that we're always accessible to them. And that's good sometimes, because we want to be viewed as dependable. However, we can't always be accessible to people all of the time. That's draining. So if you're feeling tired and you're trying to figure out why, that may have something to do with it. And of course, reaching out to a counselor or a therapist. So I hear sometimes people say, my life is just too busy. I don't have time to do things for myself. Well, that within itself is an issue. We have to take care of ourselves. Like I said, I know we have some mothers watching, we have some supervisors watching. And so, we're always having to give ourselves to other people. But you really can't be productive in either of those roles if you don't take care of yourself. But just in case you still feel like I don't have time to take care of myself, I have something for everyone. I have something for if you have 2 minutes in your day, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even 30 minutes. So there's really no excuse now. So just a simple breathing, exercising, and stretching and laughing. Now, let me say, I love to laugh. But when times are like really, really stressful, there's a lot going on at work. Sometimes it's pretty hard to find something to laugh about. As much as I have tried to avoid TikTok, I am now on TikTok. And you are bound to find something to laugh at TikTok. Now, you have to do that in moderation because, 2 minutes can very well turn into 2 hours. And in some cases, it feels like 2 days. I'm like, oh my God, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm still on TikTok. So be careful with that. And spending time with your pet, unless your pet is like my little furry child, which some of you may know, Cam Newton, but we call him Newt. He is a very active little body there. So, he has to go to daycare sometimes when I'm needing some time to myself. Okay, 5 minutes listening to your playlist that you've created, chatting with a friend, or just simply stepping outside to get that fresh air and that natural vitamin D. 10 minutes writing in your journal, calling a friend, meditating or dancing, or just listening to soothing sounds. This morning, my soothing sound was listening to the raindrops. 30 minutes exercising, eating lunch with a friend, doing yoga, or just watching your favorite TV show or taking a relaxing bath. A bath can go a long way. I know most of us, I'm sure we all take care of our hygiene, but most of us, because we're always on the go and moving, we're probably taking, showers day to day, but just taking time, one night and just, taking a bath and that uninterrupted time, can go a very long way. So incorporating that into your schedule. And so the last thing that I have for you today is that, many of you may not have taken any time for yourself today. So I want to give you a gift. And so if you will just pause from whatever you're doing and take these 30 seconds.
This is the world's first reusable cotton swab. It can remove up to 10 times more earwax. Latest stuff.
Okay, so hopefully I was able to give you at least 30 seconds today where you were able to do nothing and just kind of escape from the world. I encourage everyone to do that more and increase your 30 seconds to 60 seconds, and then eventually, hopefully, it will move to 60 minutes. That would be awesome. And so that's all that I have for you all today. I will share my screen one last time so that you all can see how to reach me if need be. And then I will also open the floor for any questions or comments.
All right, so we're just going to I think we have time for one question today. And one of our listeners actually asked about really how to help our young ones kind of readjust to life after the pandemic, and how to kind of help them get back into a new norm and things like that.
So that's a great question. So the first thing, I think a lot of our young people are still trying to adjust being in the pandemic. And so a lot of the things that I mentioned of, helping them to be able to recognize what they are experiencing and what they are feeling during this pandemic is very important. There was so much focus on the educational standpoint, which of course is very important, but there was very little focus on how is this impacting them mentally and emotionally as well. So I think the first step is going to be helping them to, one, adjust in the pandemic, and then being able to work through hopefully a transition of after the pandemic, so that it becomes in a sense, kind of a way of life that they are accustomed to being able to recognize and being aware of what's going on with them, both mentally and physically, as it relates to the pandemic. And also letting them know that it's okay not to be okay, but also asking for help and reaching out. And I think the biggest thing is being able to model that as adults to our young people, so that they know that, hey, mom and dad doesn't, we don't know sometimes, and we don't have it all together all the time either. And of course, reaching out to their school counselor. And, I know that sometimes that can be school counselors are overwhelmed, but also reaching out to outside sources as well, if need be.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Ms. Elmore. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was an honor and a pleasure to be able to do this.
Well, thank you so much. And we appreciate it. And we will speak with you soon.
Okay, thanks. Have a great one.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.